Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with an Angry Midoriya is scary, because of course it is. Alright, so this is going to be the one that where Aizawa finally figures out where Midoriya learned how to do that whole creepy thing. Okay, let's get right into it. There was a time that the League had attempted to kidnap Midoriya multiple times. But after several instances, that desire was quickly extinguished and the attempts came to a standstill. However, there was those who were unaware of this change in decision and with old information looked for the green-haired teen walking along a particularly empty street with greedy eyes. Izuku was running errands when he suddenly felt a prick in his neck. Seconds later, as his legs seemed to lose strength, did he feel someone wrap an arm around his shoulders. When he looked, he saw an unfamiliar face with a sinister grin. Using the little strength he had left, he made sure to press the button on his phone in an already determined pattern. And with that, he lost consciousness. His phone sent the message to both his mother and his homeroom teacher. Aizawa was in the middle of talking to Nezu, who was gathering a group of heroes to go get Midoriya, when the door suddenly opened. When he turned around, he saw Inko Midoriya. "I'm coming with you," she said, looking at the two of them straight on with determined eyes. "I wouldn't expect any less," Nezu said, hanging up the phone. "The signal from your son's phone is still active, so we are ready to go." "Then let's go." Then, as quick as she arrived, she left. When she did, Aizawa quickly turned to Nezu. "Are you sure she can come with us?" Nezu seen a quirk and eyebrow at the hero without saying anything. "Never mind, let's go." The heroes looked oddly at the short, stout, sweet-looking woman, who stood with them outside the old restaurant, that for some reason where Izuku's phone signal was coming from. Before Aizawa headed in, he felt a slight tug on his capture weapon and turned around. Green eyes looked at him, telling him a number of things without saying a word. He nodded back at her before turning back and heading inside. The restaurant was really on its last legs in terms of being a structurally sound building. A few rats scurried in front of the heroes, and there was absolutely no lights. Handheld flashlights lit their way as they made their way deeper in the building, looking for any signs for the UA student or the person who took him. After a few minutes, ectoplasm came across someone, but the unidentified individual was quick to run, throwing things in front of their path as they chased after him. They chased after him all the way to the back and what looked like the main kitchen, where there were stoves and various of shelves still filled with old rusted cooking materials. There was even a wall that still hung knives off of them. And in front of the wall was a man holding Izuku Midoriya in a tight grip with a knife pressing against his skin. The man was completely surrounded by Eraserhead, Vlad King, Ectoplasm, and Midnight, but held the upper hand with the teen as a hostage. Fuck. Aizawa looked over his student. The boy had looked weak on his feet. His skin was pale when the light from the flashlights managed to light the room somewhat. It looked like he was having a fever while his eyes were still bright, eyes that looked at the heroes with dilated pupils. Aizawa had a small worry about if his student had been drugged. "Midoriya, are you alright?" He asked, taking a step forward, but he stopped when the knife glistened in the light. "I wouldn't move if I were you. Would be such a shame if my hand somehow slipped," the kidnapper said before pressing the knife harder against the boy's neck, and they could see red appearing on the dirty blade. At that, no one dared to take another step forward, and the heroes closest to the back let Nezu know outside that it was a hostage situation. Midnight's quirk would have been best, but they took time to disperse and would not be quick enough before the man would have sliced Izuku's throat. There was a tense silence before the sound of the door opened in the distance, and small steps could be heard, although it didn't sound like someone anyone knew. When the steps got closer, a light was pointed at the entrance of the kitchen and showed Inko Midoriya, who stood primly with her hands clasped in front of her in the dark. Seconds later, two men came behind her out of breath. They seemed startled at the tense atmosphere, but looked at Inko and back at Eraserhead. "Sorry, we tried to stop her, but I came anyway," Inko said to Eraser. Then she turned her attention back to the man that held a knife to her son's throat. Her eyes took in the man's tall stature and significantly stayed focused on the knife that seemed to be cutting deep enough for blood to start trickling down the cut. The man looked at her with amusement and back at the boy he had hostage. He chuckled. "Aw, well look at that. Your moms came to rescue you. More like a fat pig to the slaughter from what it looks like, though, wouldn't you say?" At those words and clear insults, Izuku's eyes sharpened and glared at the man. "Shut the fuck up," he gritted out. The man chuckled more while pressing the knife harder into his neck, which made more blood come out. Izuku didn't seem to care. Meanwhile, everyone else stilled at the action and the sight of more blood. Eraser watched his student's mother's eyes seem to look behind the man at the wall full of different knives. Then, when she spoke, it was calm but cold. "Let my son go." The man laughed before letting his smile drop and looking coldly at her. "Or what, bitch? You can't do anything or I'll slit his throat like a cow in front of his pig mother." At those words, there was a shift in the air, and the heroes watched as a knife was suddenly pulled from the wall and stopped at the back of the man's neck, the sharp point digging into his skin, as if it was someone invisible who was holding it in midair against his neck. The heroes looked at each other to see what could have caused that, but no one had a quirk like that. The only person who knew something like that when it came to Aizawa's mind was the civilian who stood in front of them in the dark kitchen. From the side where Midnight was, she could see the blood welling from where the knife was digging into the man's neck, and the man could feel as the blood dropped down his back. Meanwhile, Inko Midoriya was smiling. Her eyes seemed to glow as her smile looked innocent but sharp, just like the two knives that were cutting into someone's skin. And when she spoke, her words were cutting. "It would be easy for me to pull this knife and cut your skin and pass the bone to protect your spinal cord. I could easily do that right now." Inko brought her hands up, gesturing in a way that could be used to beckon someone closer. "If you don't let my son go, I can even use the cleaver that's behind your head to decapitate you. The knife at your neck, this is too small to do that right now," she said as if she was only slightly disappointed by that fact. The man laughed nervously at her last words. He glanced at the surrounding heroes with an awkward smile. "You wouldn't dare in front of all these heroes." When Inko's smile got bigger, everyone except her son seemed to freeze. Eraserhead wasn't even sure if she was serious or not, but he was leaning towards the more bloody choice. And it was a standstill as more blood trickled down from Izuku's neck and the knife was still pressed onto the back of the man's neck. He kept staring at the woman's green eyes that seemed to bore into him. Her smile seemed mockingly sweet, made his stomach turn in discomfort. Then, when he glanced to look down at her son, at the toxic green eyes, they looked at him, identical to his mother. The pressure that she had given off felt heavier. The pain from the back of his neck felt more present, and he thought how quickly she could make a cleaving cut through his neck. It was the woman that had the gall to come unarmed and stand before him looking as calm as she did and threatening him in front of the heroes. He didn't think he could be fast enough to escape. if he didn't do as she said. The man dropped the knife. Izuku slipped easily out of his grasp, while the man seemed to collapse onto the floor. Aizawa saw how quickly Inko's smile changed to one that seemed less suffocating when her son was now in her arms. And she fretted over the cut at his neck. She was even crying and was soon joined by her son, who tried to calm her down. They both were failing at stopping their tears. The underground hero looked at the kidnapper. Black King was now securing with cuffs. The man in question looked pale. Aizawa couldn't blame him. Inko Midoriya was quite the sight to see. It reminded him of his student when he had gotten angry, and with what he had just witnessed, the question of where Izuku got in his such a terrifying demeanor when angry was no longer a mystery. Finally, I did it. Oh god. Yay. Man, I think that just exhausted me, bruh. Okay. Well, we got that done over with, and the next thing we gonna do is another short story. It's a one chapter this time, but we got that all situated, so expect more from me. And if you want to see more of all the stuff that I'm doing, you know what to do.